Hello, my name is Colin and welcome to the Virtual DM. In this video, we're going to look at how to upload, prep, and share a battle map. Now, before we get into uploading, there's some good things to know about how to make sure your file, your map file, your image file, is going to be best suited for use in Fantasy Grounds. So I'm going to open up a website here. This is the developer guide off of the Fantasy Grounds Unity wiki. Specifically looking at product guidelines. There's some good information in here on file names, file images, file sizes. If we go over here to the Fantasy Grounds forum, Leyrun, who is looks after Fantasy Grounds Academy, has a post here that also has some good information on your resolution sizes, standard, high definition, full HD, all the way through, and as well as some good information on making sure you have the correct file size. Now, essentially, if we go back to our Fantasy Grounds here, I'm just going to bring up, this is out of the Fantasy Grounds developer guidelines for player maps. So the recommended format is the WebP format, a format created by Google using 75% quality. So that will produce what they say, they suggest will be a good player map. Within those recommendations, they're looking for less than or equal to a 4,000 by 4,000 pixel resolution for your image itself, for your map. Less than or equal to a 2 megabyte file size for a static, or less than or equal to 10 meg file size for animated. Now, we're only going to look at a static map today. I will be looking at uploading animated files in a future video. So I did a little check, a little side-by-side comparison, which I will show you. So this is an image. It's a battle map. This is the original file. I created this out of an image that I cloned in Incarnate. This was saved as a JPEG. The file size is about 4K by 3K. And that came out with a 6,221 kilobyte, or approximately a 6 meg file size. Now that is very big. And the goal here with your file size is to get the best resolution possible with the smallest file size as possible, because what that will ensure is that your players are able to easily upload this map when you share it with them. So you want to sort of achieve your best resolution, smallest file size. So as a JPEG, 6 meg, I saved this exact JPEG file as a WebP file. And I'll open that up in a side-by-side comparison. So we can see here, this is the battle map, the original file, saved as a WebP, same size, and that dropped the file size down to 1,446 kilobytes. So just about 1.5 meg. If we look at these two files, very, very little difference can be seen between the two files. We do have a little bit extra clarity in the JPEG file than we do in the WebP file, but not something that would be noticed by anyone. Nothing that would detract from using this particular map as your battle map. So the WebP file, fantastic way to minimize that file size and still get really good resolution. So we will close those up and now actually take a look at what you have to do to upload a file into Fantasy Grounds. So to start off here, we are going to come over to our images button. We're going to click on there, and that's going to open our images window. Down towards the bottom here, we have this little blue button that says import. So we're going to click on that, and that is going to open a window where we can now search through, find the particular image file that we want to upload. Now, I have uploaded some images from this particular location in my file system earlier, so it took me back to here. But I'm going to load up this version of battle map called Bridge on the Road to Winterglen. As you can see, this is a WebP file. About 1.4 megabytes, as you saw in the previous demonstration. And this one does not have a grid. We will show you how to put a grid on there. But I have my file. I'm just going to double click on that, and that will open it up here in Fantasy Grounds for me. So in order to work on this particular image file that is opened up, I'm just going to left click here, going to drag this up in the top corner. Now, a good little hint here when you want to maneuver your window size, you can grab down in the corner and kind of manipulate this around. Or you can simply, while your cursor is inside of the window, press and hold Control, and then you can essentially do the exact same thing. And we're going to take that right down to the bottom here while we're working on it so that it fills up the entire space I have available. We're going to come up here, this little toggle toolbar. I'm going to drop that down, have an option here, zoom to fit. So I'm going to click on that, and that's going to open that up in that window for me full size. I'll just close that up for now. So at this point, we have uploaded our image. We have it open here. Just a couple of other sort of good to knows in terms of working with your map. You hopefully have a scroll wheel on your mouse. You can use that scroll wheel to zoom in and out. And the way that this works is wherever your mouse is, that is the area where you are going to zoom into. So you can see as I zoom in and out and I move my mouse around, it changes the area that I zoom into. So that makes it very quick and easy. If I have something going on up here in our top left corner, I want to zoom into that area. Just need to have my mouse there and use that scroll wheel in and out. If I want to move the map around, I can come down here, left click in this little area, and then sort of pull back and forth, push up and down. That lets me move the map around. Another way you can do that, if you do have a scroll wheel, is you can push down on your scroll wheel as sort of a third button, and now I can move this map around. And I do find that that is a faster and easier way to sort of move your map around inside of your window. The next thing we're going to look at is putting a grid onto our map. So we need to have a grid on the map so that Fantasy Grounds understands how to size your tokens when you place them on the map. So if I have my area here, my map area here, I'm going to open up my combat tracker, and I'm just going to take our first character here, Blaze, and I'm just going to drop him on that map. And Fantasy Grounds doesn't really understand what size this token should be right now because I don't have any sort of grid on there. So it just dumps it on in a default size. And you can see that's quite a bit smaller than I would anticipate that this bridge is. you know, the bridge is probably around 20 feet or so. So that's just not going to work. So I'm going to get rid of this token here. Just close up our combat tracker. So I'm going to put a grid on here. So we've got our tool area open here. This map is currently unlocked to access that. When we lock it, all of those tools go away, and this is how we would utilize the map in a play situation. Just unlock that, and I'm going to come over to our last option here, which is grid. Now, I'm not going to get into all of this other stuff. That'll be for another video. All we want to focus on right now is putting a grid on this map. Now, there's two different methods. You can click on here. That'll make a grid of 50 by 50 appear right on here, and then I can move it around. I prefer to sort of select the mouse. So that's select grid with mouse. I can move around here, and I kind of, you know, I got a feel for the size that I think this is going to be. So I'm going to kind of draw that out until, you know, I said I kind of feel that this bridge would be about 20 feet wide or so, 15, 20 feet wide in that area. So I'm just going to drag that out. And there we go. We now have our grid that's on the map. And now if I go back to my combat tracker and I drop Blaze on this map, you'll see that he is sized to this grid, which is going to make more sense for the way that I want to play the size of this particular bridge. Now, if you have a map that has an existing grid on it, you can still use it. So we're going to close our combat tracker here. I'm just going to get rid, actually, we'll just leave this on there. So I'm going to close this version of the map. I have the same map just saved down here on my quick toolbar that has the grid on it already. Now, this is not a Fantasy Grounds grid. This is a grid that was placed on here on the original image. I still need to place a Fantasy Grounds grid over top of this so that Fantasy Grounds understands what size everything is. And to demonstrate that again, right now there is no Fantasy Grounds grid on this. There is just a grid on the original image. If I drop this token, you can see it is not sized for this grid. It's just the default size again. So I will take that token off, close our combat tracker, and we are going to put a Fantasy Grounds grid over top of this grid. Now, we'll come back here to our grid button again, and we are going to use our set grid with mouse button again. So I'm going to zoom in here to make this a little easier. You can see I'm just going to kind of line myself up here, left click, and drag out a grid that kind of matches the existing one. All right. So I have matched this up pretty good here. If I need to bump this around a little bit, I have these adjustment buttons. You can kind of nudge left, you can nudge right, or you can do a smaller nudge if you just want to bounce that around just a little bit. Okay, so I have moved this. Looks like it's pretty lined up, but one of the things you'll sometimes find is that if you scroll out and you come out here to the edges of your map, you'll see that things aren't quite lining up. Now, this is not too bad, but I am going to adjust the size of this grid just a little bit to see if I can't get these outer edges to line up better. So up here, this is my grid size, 92 by 92. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to change this to 91.9. So I'm just going to shrink this just a little tiny bit. You can see already that has lined up a little better. Maybe we'll go 91.8. Yeah, and that looks a little better. So we're just going to give it a little nudge over here. If I zoom out, I'm going to come back to the middle of our map. Everything still looks pretty good here. Other end of my map. So that's pretty close. I could, looks like, shift things over just a hair. There we go. Now, what I will often do with my actual grid, so in this case, we have a white grid. I've added in a dark colored grid. I'm going to, just because, I'm going to nudge that down just a little bit and over just a little bit, because I'm just a perfection kind of guy. Okay, so there we go. Now what I will do is I'll come up here to the color picker, and we can actually adjust the opacity of this. And I'm going to fade this out a bit. Now that won't change anything for Fantasy Grounds. It still knows that the Fantasy Grounds grid is there. But that won't interfere color-wise or make the original grid that was on there look strange in any way. So now if I open my combat tracker, I grab Blaze here, I drop him on the map, you can see that he is now properly sized for this map. And if I throw we have Cypher here, throw him on, same thing. So we have our tokens all on there that we're able to move around. And just so I explain what I did there, I had to move from the grid function to the play function in order to be able to manipulate the tokens on the map. I'm going to close my combat tracker. So the last thing we need to do now, we have our map loaded in. I'm going to lock it out. So I'm just looking at the map area. And what I need to do is share this with my players. So we've got our two players on here, Blaze and Cypher. I'm going to right click on this map, choose this function here that says sharing, left click on there, and then left click on share record. And if I move over to my players map, we can see that we have a big version of this that opened up on my players map. So again, I'm going to take this, put it up in the top corner. To size it out, I'm going to hold down Shift and just drag that to the edge. And there we go. In our player side of things, we have this map open. Now, depending on dealing with real estate issues for this player, they may move it to be a much smaller version somewhere that works for them. Just zoom into the area that they're working with so that they can have other windows open. Using the scroll wheel, once again, zoom in and out, and then press and hold that scroll button down allows me to move that area around. And remembering again, wherever your mouse is on the map, when you scroll in, that is the area that you will zoom into. So that's couple of good little tricks there to work your way around your map. All right, returning to my Dungeon Master's map. Once our combat is over, once we have finished utilizing this particular battle map, I want to unshare that so that my players don't have that file on their side of things anymore. Again, trying to keep space for the campaign in mind all the time. So again, I'm going to right click, I'm going to left click on sharing, and I'm going to come down here to stop sharing record and left click on that. So now if we go back to our players map, you can see that that map has disappeared. That player can no longer see the map. And if I actually come over to images, you can see the only image file that they currently have access to is this little player one that I use up top to make the maps or the versions of Fantasy Grounds clear. So back over to our DM's map. We have made sure we had the correct file size created. We have uploaded that into Fantasy Grounds. We positioned it on our screen. We have added a grid to both a gridless and a gridded map, and shown how we can kind of bump things around there to get it all to line up. And we've seen how we can share that with our players and then unshare it when it is complete. So that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it.